the onus is on all of us. Everyone listening to this podcast is to make product marketing come to the table to be a lot more strategic. When you're starting to have conversations with your stakeholders and they start talking about assets or they start talking about, tools or tactical things, up level that conversation. Start to understand why you're always going to have to do some of the outputs and, tactical things. It's the strategic pieces that you need to understand to make a much more concerted go-to-market strategy.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, the product marketing community that gives back. I'm your host, Louise Liu. In this episode, April Rassa, the head of product marketing at Cohere, shares her thoughts on making product marketing strategic. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, April. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Louise. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Great. So let's get started with a short introduction and then tell us how did you get into product marketing?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I started my career actually on the services side. So I was in advertising at Leo Burnett in Chicago and then transitioned into public relations and communications at Edelman Worldwide, where I ran the enterprise practice. And then one of my clients actually hired me in-house to run marketing. And I think that was the journey that just really started for me in terms of understanding all of the nuances on marketing, from corporate marketing to product marketing to partner marketing, brand marketing. And at the time when I was taking products to market or devising messaging and positioning or figuring out segmentation, didn't really know I was doing product marketing, but I was actually doing product marketing. And so I felt like I was that was kind of my sweet spot, kind of being at the nexus of all these different teams and working cross-functionally, and figuring out how to take things to market. So that's a quick snapshot of me. And then I've worked at a number of different B2B SaaS companies where I've led 4 successful exits to Cisco, Google, JP Morgan Chase, and the recent one with Box. So it's been a great journey for sure.
Great. That's great to hear. So your recent role was Vice President of Product Marketing at HackerOne. Maybe you can give us a little bit background, like what did you do there as the Vice President of Product Marketing?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was surrounded by just really smart people across the organization. I would say I would break down our product marketing function into maybe 4 specific buckets. The first, is really probably around like market strategy, customer insights, and product roadmap. So we led market trends, competitive customer and prospect sort of research to really understand the root of customer issues and problems. We would analyze the market data. We'd hone in on customer intel and really help with the insights. And then we'd collaborate with our product counterparts throughout the whole process to prioritize some of the big questions that we wanted to answer, and the intel to help influence the product strategy and the roadmap decisions. That's sort of the first bucket. The second bucket is really around positioning, messaging, packaging, and pricing. So developing customer-facing strategy to really understand what is our unique differentiator in the marketplace. We'd provide, inputs on capabilities, features. We'd have a pretty good sense as far as our COGS, and to help really inform, right, the pricing and packaging. We generally do a lot of the work around the pricing. And then obviously, working with all the different stakeholders in terms of understanding our positioning and messaging and making sure that we were really appealing to the right value to our prospects and ultimately our users. The third bucket, I would say, is really just the core go-to-market strategy. So we'd partner with our product folks on defining the product market readiness criteria. We'll develop the go-to-market strategy. We'll make sure we were getting alignment on the level of the launch as well as the goals and KPIs. And then we'll make sure we're aligned on all of those launch activities before kind of getting into the execution, right? And working with our marketing, sales, CS teams to kind of bring the campaigns to life and executing against the strategy. And then last but not least is really the sort of the post launch. It's the amplification, it's the feedback, it's the refinement that you need to do as a product marketing team, where you start to understand and monitor the campaign and the product, adoption metrics to see what's sticking. You get feedback from the CS team, the sales team, the RevOps, to really get a full picture of, were we successful in terms of a launch? What do we need to do to make improvements and to host a retro maybe so that we can, continually improve the process. So those are probably the four key buckets that we devised, from a product marketing, function at HackerOne.
So, from your personal experience as a leader of product marketing in your organization, at the time, what are your biggest challenges?
It's a good question. I think for all of us that have been in product marketing, depending on the maturity of an organization, it's just, it's a misunderstood department, and the goal is always going to be provide clarity on what is the product marketing function, and then to ruthlessly prioritize. I like to think of product marketing as helping connect the market to your product. That's a little upside down from maybe how most people think about it, which is you build a product and then you take it to market. The starting point is always going to have to be that market lens, because the landscape, as all of us know listening to this podcast, is that product marketing and all the products we're taking to market, it's really crowded, and there's so many companies doing similar overlapping things that you are doing. So you need to start by having that market intel that you understand deeply, so that you can find that wedge for your product and where it fits, and do all the things both strategically and tactically in order to win. And I think those are probably some of the key aspects that are challenging, and that's what makes the function so fun and fluid.
Like you said, often the product marketing this function is a little bit misunderstood by people, and then often it's difficult to get consensus actually on what product marketing is and what product marketing does. Maybe back to the fundamental here, like maybe we can find maybe a set of responsibilities that everyone would kind of agree on be the baseline responsibility. What are they?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think every organization is going to be slightly nuanced, slightly different, because of the blend of the core extensive product knowledge, the marketing, core competencies, and the sales focus. Product marketers typically act as this translator between the product team, the marketing team, and the sales team. And at the end of the day, product marketers, you're really tasked with supplying each of these teams with the necessary knowledge, the tools, and the feedback, right, to deliver that right product to the right audience. So maybe it might be helpful to just kind of break it down. So to the sales team, product marketing delivers that product messaging. It helps them understand, the swim lanes that they fall in, and help enable them in terms of how do you go toe to toe with the key buyers that you're selling to. The buyers and the users are going to be slightly nuanced. So making sure that sales understands that, understanding the ecosystem that they fall in terms of competitive landscape. So you supercharge, your sales and marketing teams in a world where it's super hard to break through. And you got to do this by being very clear on what is that buyer journey, and what sets your product apart for those, target buyers, and how is it going to make their lives better. And yes, there's like tactical assets that you create, right? There's battle cards, and there's, sales tools and all that good stuff that you create. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your sales team has the confidence to go toe to toe with a competitor, and to be able to go to that, influencer or that buyer, and be able to talk about the value prop that your product delivers, right? To the product team, you want to make sure that, as a product marketing function, you're providing those market trends and patterns, customer patterns you're seeing in the buying stages, right? Why are we losing in deals? Why are we winning? Who are we losing to, and why? How are we viewed by maybe some of the key influencers in the marketplace? Take a look at some of the RFQs and RFPs. What are those key components that we're winning, and maybe we're slightly not winning, or falling short? How do we fare? And start to, again, be that translation layer between what was built and what will be meaningful to those audiences. And that's really how you can get yourself at the table with the product folks is to bring a lot of that insight to the table and help them think about the roadmap. And then, obviously our marketing counterparts, you want to make sure you're very clear on the primary and secondary audiences we're going after. Product marketing spends a lot of time understanding these audiences. So you start to get a good sense of the channels that they're hanging out in. You get a good sense of the type of messaging that's working. You get a really good sense on the key messages that are going to be resonating with these folks. So you want to make sure you arm your marketing counterparts so that they're successful, building out those campaigns and building out those channels to really activate those audiences.
I see. I see. Thank you. Thank you. Today, our topic is making product marketing more strategic. So, maybe in your own words, what does strategic product marketing mean to you? And then, what makes the role of product marketing more strategic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, it's being relevant, and it's bringing data and customer insights to the forefront. If I were to kind of maybe boil it down to four essential things that I think product marketing and this audience could maybe take away from, the first is you have to have a deep understanding and knowledge of your customer and the market context. The second is you got to establish that product marketing strategy, what it needs to do to achieve the company goals, right? At the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're mapping to the core tenets and KPIs around the company goals. The third is really around positioning, owning that place in the market and bridging the gap between the product and the customer. And then last but not least, you want to enable that advocacy and evangelism across, the organization. You're going to be obviously the spokesperson for the product to be able to talk about the key value props, but there's other folks too. You want to make sure you enable them and advocate them. So you've got folks in, obviously, in the product world. You've got your sales folks, you've got key folks within your marketing, events and campaigns. So everyone's going to have to be on the same footing when it comes to the positioning that you've developed.
Maybe it would be more helpful to look at the strategic product marketing from a few different aspects, like from product, go to market, this competition. Do you have any thoughts on what can product marketers do making this role more strategic?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a few things that as a product marketing team we can do. Again, it really depends on sort of where you are in terms of your journey within your organization. A lot of times you might be in a tactical area where your product counterparts may be looking at you more from a tactical perspective. The product is done, the features are done, they're going to lop it over the fence, go launch it, right? And a lot of that is just building trust, building relationships across the teams so that you can have a seat at that table where you can be a lot more strategic and you can bring a lot of the insights that you're gathering from the research that you're doing, like you said, around competitive, or the research that you're doing in terms of your installed base, or those win-loss analysis, some of the feedback loops that you're getting from your sales, your SEs, your CS team. In order for you to be successful and to be strategic, you're going to have to lead with data. You're going to have to lead with customer insights. And don't just stop if you can't get access to the customer. There's ways that you can talk to those different buyers. There's ways that you can talk to those primary decision makers. There's if you don't have a customer advocacy program, let's start thinking about building one. There could be one for decision makers, there could be one for technical decision makers. Start to really uncover ways that you can get those insights that you couldn't get before, because that's the only way that you can be relevant and strategic at the table.
Thank you, and very helpful tips. Um, in your opinion, who should be more concerned with this issue that product marketing are not being viewed as more strategic?
I think, I mean, if we look at product marketing as a strategic arm within the organization, hopefully there should be alignment across the organization. I mean, product marketing is a critical function within an organization, and hopefully you get buy-in from your C-level folks, from your CEO all the way down. That's a pretty good indication that they understand the value that product marketing brings to any organization, right? Again, being that translation layer between what was built and what will be meaningful to those specific audiences is exactly how you need to rethink about product marketing. And so, I would say it's a function that everyone in the organization should be caring about. And because you're sort of at this nexus of these teams, so your C-level folks, all the stakeholders that you deal with around products, sales, CS, those are folks that you want to make sure understand the importance of this function.
Yeah, I see. I see. So it seems like businesses are they're better off with product marketing this function being more strategic. Why? In reality, there's so few companies actually doing that. So what happened? Like what stops them from making product marketing more strategic?
Yeah, I think the tide is starting to change, though, to be honest with you. I think we're starting to see more CMOs with more product marketing bent come to the forefront than, the traditional sense has been, oh, we want someone with a growth or demand function as a lead. Now it's becoming a lot more focused on, market insights and trending and being able to understand positioning and messaging, and looking at those capabilities as key levers when selecting your next VP of marketing or CMO. So I think a lot of it has to do with the onus is on all of us, everyone listening to this podcast, is to make product marketing really at the come to the table with the things that we just talked about, all of the key inputs that you're getting from all of the different stakeholders, and to be a lot more strategic. When you're starting to have conversations with your stakeholders and they start talking about assets, or they start talking about tools or tactical things, up level that conversation, start to understand why are we going after this, why we built the key features or capabilities, right? Those are the ways that you can really deposition sort of the tactical pieces. That's always going to be part of the recipe. You're always going to have to do some of the outputs and tactical things. It's the strategic pieces that you need to understand to make a much more concerted go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think, like you said earlier, that part of the reason why the maturity of the company they don't understand what product marketing does. But I think on the other hand, as a product marketer, you do have this kind of responsibility of taking the initiative to make your own role more strategic, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
There are ways for a product marketer to tell that how mature this company is, like what are the signs that maybe they should be looking out for.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it all starts in the initial sort of interview process that you're going through, right, for that specific role. You're vying for that product marketing, either manager, senior manager, principal, director, head of. You want to understand, like, you want to be able to talk to the specific stakeholders that are going to be involved, right? Are you interviewing the folks that are functional within those leads, the product folks, the sales, the CS, the marketing? Talk to some of the initial, maybe product marketing members, and really get a good sense of what is the collective understanding of the roles and responsibilities for the function. You'll start to understand if there's consistency in terms of the expectations for the role. How is the current PMM function operating? Or if it's not, if it's a net new product function that you're going after, what are the expectations, and are those aligned when you're speaking to the other folks as well? How does the current function work and is aligned with the product team? What are the expectations there? How is PMM viewed across these teams? You can get a pretty good sense in your questioning around the expectations that each of these stakeholders may have. Do they view it more from a tactical perspective? Do they view it more from a strategic? Is it a hybrid? You know what I mean? Like, those are the pieces that you can get a pretty good sense, and the signs that you could be looking at in terms of product marketing. And if you feel like you're just getting pigeonholed into a very tactical, role as we just want copy or we just want content, then you need to understand, is there room to make that change within the organization? Or, is this not maybe the right opportunity for you to be pursuing?
I wanted to ask you, what is the ideal, this sort of when product marketing, this function becomes, quite viewed as strategic and it's executed as strategic in a company. What does it look like?
Good question. Yeah. I think there's a couple things, right? There's first of all, there's an appetite across the company to have this position or this function really be at the hub. You're the jelly in the donut, right? The idea here is, can you help us understand, you know, where we're going from a market perspective? Can you help us understand, the current messaging and positioning? Are we speaking the right language to the current audiences that we're going after? Those are the levers or pieces that you can start to understand. And if there is an appetite from an organizational perspective to look at that and to be able to create that customer journey that's a lot more strategic, right? Those are the ways that you can start to think about product marketing and seeing, okay, there's an appetite here to make this a lot more strategic within an organization.
Great, great. And then you have been in the field in the product marketing for quite a long time. Looking at the big picture, do you see any evolution to product marketing this function over the years?
I think we're all starting to see a number of different growth models start to take place by, different companies at different stages. These may include, marketing led, it could be sales led, it could be, product led growth. And, if we're not leveraging all of these sort of growth motions and levers, you'll be disrupted by the competition. So don't feel like it has to be one or the other. Strategy isn't about which, 3x3 option you're going to pick, but rather when and how to sequence them all. So if we think about an example today, like the traditional sort of, mode from a B2B, I'm going to talk about it from a B2B lens because that's sort of where my heritage comes from. Is, you've got your traditional sort of MQL where it's pipeline focus, and then you get into the sales qualified lead, and then you get into product usage where the value is actually realized. I think the future is going to be a lot more around product led sales, which is, you think about the data that your product is bringing. So the product usage, so users beginning to use your product, you start to understand the behavioral attributes, you start to understand how to segment them better. You start to get usage data and triggers and where sales can then have interest. Then you start to think about, okay, how does marketing then actually find that buyer? And then how does sales close? That's a different motion. And I think that's sort of where the future is going. And I think product marketing is going to play a pretty big role in terms of really, understanding that go-to-market motion, or any of these motions really, as I talked about, you think about marketing led, sales led, or product led. And so I'm super excited about the future of product marketing and where we can have a foothold into those areas.
I really like your view on the three different motions. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
No, I guess I would just encourage everyone to continue to be really focused on asking the right questions when you're at the table, and making sure that when it comes down to segmentation, target, and positioning, it's really critical to understand the audience that you're going after so that you can unlock that. And don't be so fixated on maybe the tactical pieces. Try to raise the conversation into more of the strategic, to be able to understand, the why behind it before you get into the what and the how.
Yeah, great, great. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Louise. It's great, and I'm super excited to be a part of the community.
Thank you for tuning into This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources. including training, playbooks, templates, and events. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.